overview of the PACT Act and what's included. I just want to let you guys know that everything here is as accurate as possible. There might be some mistakes. I looked it over. There shouldn't be too many. And as with anything that's new, things are going to be constantly changing. So I'll be trying to update these slides as they get updated. So let's get started. So PACT Act, what is it? PACT Act stands for Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics. It was signed into law August 10th, 2022, and it mainly added new locations and presumptive conditions for Vietnam and Gulf War veterans. It also added TERA, which I'll get into later. So Vietnam locations, the locations that were in effect prior to August 10th, any military, naval, air veteran in Vietnam between January 9th, 1962 to May 7th, 1975, Air Force and certain Royal Thai bases, including Utapao, Ubon, Udorn, so on and so forth. Army that served on one of the above bases had to either be an MP or military specialized unit, police specialized unit. Johnston Island between 1972 and 1977, and any veteran that served on a ship that was in eligible offshore waters or inland waterways. Blue Water Navy Act. So these are the locations that were added or changed as of August 10th, 2022. So now we are including any U.S. or Thai base in Thailand, and there's no limitation on MOS. So a cook, infantry, anyone who was on any U.S. Thai base now qualifies. And this is going to be from January 9th, 1962 to June 30th, 1976. Laos from December 1st, 1965 to September 30th, 1969. Cambodia at Minwa or Krek, April 16th, 1969 to April 30th, 1969. Guam or American Samoa or in the territorial waters thereof, January 9th, 1962 to July 31st, 1980. Or they served on the Johnston Atoll or on a ship that called at Johnston Atoll from January 1st, 1972 to September 30th, 1977. So these are going to be the presumptive conditions for Vietnam vets. On the left, you have all the ones that were previously added, with the three newest ones being bladder cancer, hypothyroidism, and Parkinsonism. The two new conditions that were added are hypertension, and these will be effective August 20th, 2022, and MGUS. And there is no requirement for these conditions to manifest to a compensable level. So if you are granted a 0% or you warrant a 0%, you could still get these presumptively service-connected. So I split up Gulf War veterans into two different sections. Gulf War veterans based on 38 CFR 3.317 and 3.320. So the first section is going to be 3.317. So these were the locations prior to the PACT Act. Southwest Asia Theater of Operations, which encompasses Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, the Gulf of Aden, the Gulf of Oman, the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea, and the airspace above these locations. As of August 10th, 2022, Afghanistan, Turkey, Israel, Syria, Egypt, and Jordan were added as well. And 3.317 specifically refers to MUCMEs and undiagnosed illnesses. So 3.320 Gulf War locations prior to the PACT Act were the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations, just like with 3.317, as well as Afghanistan, Syria, Djibouti, or Uzbekistan after September 19, 2001. Locations that were changed or added after the PACT Act. So they moved some of the dates back, so you could get an earlier, if you were in one of these countries earlier, you can now claim presumptive connection. They are Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, and United Arab Emirates. And this next section, on or after September 11, 2001, Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, and Jordan are both new. Lebanon is new, Syria, Yemen, and Uzbekistan. So PACT Act presumptives in relation to Gulf War veterans. So previously for 3.317, an undiagnosed illness had to manifest at least to 10% and had to manifest before December 31st, 2026. Same thing with a medically unexplained chronic multi-symptom illness, aka MUCMI. As of August 10th, 2022, because of the PACT Act, there is no more minimum evaluation for an undiagnosed illness or a MUCMI. Additionally, you could have these conditions manifest at any time after service, as long as you meet the criteria for locations, and you will be granted. For 3.320, you had asthma, rhinitis, sinusitis. These had to be manifested within 10 years of discharge. So if you discharged in 2010, you had to have one of these conditions manifest by 2020. They also added, as of April 26, 2022, a bunch of cancers, mainly respiratory cancers. Some changes because of the PACT Act is now asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis can manifest at any point after discharge, and they will be presumptively service-connected. They also added head, neck, respiratory, gastrointestinal, reproductive, lymphoma, lymphomatic cancers of any type, kidney, brain cancer, melanoma, pancreatic cancer, chronic bronchitis, COPD, constrictive, obliterative bronchiolitis, emphysema, granulomatous disease, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis, sarcoidosis, glioblastoma, and as I mentioned already, asthma, chronic sinusitis, and chronic rhinitis. So TERA, what is it? TERA stands for Toxic Exposure Risk Activity. The definition is any activity that requires a corresponding entry in an exposure tracking record system. One of the biggest ones is going to be ILAR, which we'll get into in the next slide. TERA procedures will apply to veterans who claim a non-presumptive disability and participated in a TERA as outlined above. Claims granted based on TERA would be granted as direct and not presumptive. TERA can apply to any and all veterans, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Gulf War, any future veterans. TERA can apply to them. Identifying a TERA claim. Veterans can either explicitly claim toxic exposure via their claim or through lay statements. So if you submit a 526 easy and you say you have sleep apnea and you believe it's due to toxic exposures in Iraq, that's identifying it as a TERA claim. If a veteran does not explicitly say that they believe this condition is due to this exposure, the VBA can also liberally construe these claims related to TERA through any of the ways below. So if the veteran has service in a location associated with toxic exposure, such as Kuwait, any Southwest Asian country, if the MOS is associated with toxic exposure, I know a lot of my Air Force guys, they're around jet fuel a lot of the time. So if you have a MOS that we could positively identify as being exposed to this, we could grant it based off of the MOS. ILR, or other military records showing participation in TERA. So ILR is a program that the DoD uses, and whenever a unit or battalion or what have you has possible association with the toxic exposure, they enter it into the system, and the VA could pull from that system. Documented concession in the veteran C file, such as a memo 11119 or a 1117. So these are memos. The computer automatically scans a veteran's file, and if they see anything that might point to possible toxic exposure, such as in the DD-14, the computer sees that you went to Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, they'll automatically pull that and automatically create this memo, and it'll go into the veteran's file. Medical records containing allegations of toxic exposure. A lot of times in a veteran's file, service treatment records, it will say, or I know another common one is post-deployment health questionnaires. It'll have questions: were you exposed to this chemical? Were you exposed to this? So on and so forth. So that could be used to concede TERA, or any other relevant evidence. So let's say the veteran has service, but none of it is, we can't link it to TERA. However, they are able to find a article online showing that their unit that they were a part of at the time was exposed to X chemical or toxin. That could be used as well. So TERA exceptions are where essentially what we'll use when we can't concede TERA. We're not going to get TERA based on these exceptions. So any non-presumptive claims based on physical trauma, such as back condition, neck, knee conditions, etc. Hearing loss, and I should add tinnitus, is not considered a physical trauma. So any hearing loss or tinnitus claims, if we can't grant it direct or presumptively based on 3.309, then we will get a TERA memo for that. There's an exception to this. There's an exception to the exception. If a veteran submits a claim and they say, I have arthritis in my knee, and they provide evidence such as peer-reviewed articles or a doctor's letter or something stating that this X chemical has been found to cause arthritis, at that point we can get a TERA memo for that. But the veteran has to provide evidence of that. Mental disorders, same thing applies, exception to the exception. If a veteran can provide documentation showing X chemicals that they believe they were exposed to or toxins cause this mental disorder or certain mental disorders, we could get a TERA exception. Conditions determined to have no positive association with herbicide exposure. This applies only to herbicide exposure, obviously. An example would be claiming hearing loss as due to herbicide exposure. There's no evidence out there showing that hearing loss is due to herbicide exposure, so we wouldn't get a TERA memo at that point. Claims for disabilities that manifested during military service or with an etiology not associated with toxic exposure. So how does TERA work? So the veteran will submit a claim with a non-presumptive condition. I'm going to use sleep apnea as an example, but this could apply to multiple things: migraines, GERD, hearing loss, tinnitus. The VSR will look over the contentions and the veteran's file and make an initial determination on whether or not to conduct a TERA memo. So the VSR is going to look at the claim. He's going to see that the veteran claimed sleep apnea, and they're going to be like, okay, let me look to see where he served. And if he can make a quick determination that this could possibly be a TERA claim, they're going to go to the next step. So once the decision is made, a TERA memorandum will be completed. And the TERA memorandum is just something VSRs are going to do. They're going to pull up the veteran's ILR as well as their service records, treatment records, DD-214, and they're going to answer a bunch of basic questions on the memo, such as, does veteran have evidence that they served in this location? Do they have these memos, the section, the memo 11119 or memo 11117 in their file? Does the ILR show possible exposure to toxins, so on and so forth? Then the VSR will review the veteran's medical records, C-file, as well as utilizing any other tools at their hands, such as the individual longitudinal exposure record, ILR, to complete the TERA memo. And as I said, ILR is a DoD program that documents potential toxin exposure. Once the memo is complete, if TERA is conceded, then the VSR will order a TERA exam and opinion. The exam is going to be just the same as any other regular exam. The only difference is going to be the opinion. The TERA opinion includes special verbiage to let the examiner know that the veteran was exposed to certain toxins, and will pretty much ask, is this condition, in our case sleep apnea, possibly related to these toxins? Once the examination is complete, the claim will go to a rater to rate and finalize the claim. So if for whatever reason the VSR misses something important in the veteran's document, so let's say the VSR does not request a TERA memo because they don't see anything, then it finally gets to rater and they see something, then the rater can defer to obtain a TERA memo. And these are just some relevant references. It's not fully up to date, but I believe it is substantial. And that is it. That's TERA in a nutshell. Like I said, there's going to be changes, clarifications made on certain things I discussed, as well as new things added over time. But hopefully this gives you some insight on PACT Act and especially TERA. TERA will make it easier for veterans to claim that disabilities are due to certain toxins. It used to be in the past that veterans would get denied automatically, and they'd have to appeal, and they'd have to try to essentially prove that they were exposed to these toxins.